Frozen text is the same each time it's rendered. So it's like a poem or the Lord's Prayer, the national anthem, and it's usually used in settings like weddings, funerals, or even swearing-in ceremonies. The vocabulary used in the Frozen register is often complex and sometimes even archaic, like in the example of the Lord's Prayer. If you think about the Miranda warning, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. It seems simple, but if you really look at it, there's a lot of complex hidden meaning behind that statement. Typically, there is no actual turn-taking that goes on when reciting any kind of Frozen text, but occasionally the audience members will actually chime in and recite it in unison. Speech and signs are usually slowed down and more clearly enunciated in the Frozen register. And when signing, a larger signing space is used. Formal register essentially just means somebody's addressing a very large audience. It could be a welcome address or a minister delivering a sermon, even a keynote speaker at a large conference. Speakers are usually separated from the audience. They're on stage or they have a podium, and so there's no turn-taking expected in that kind of environment. But every once in a while at a conference situation, you will find a distinct question and answer period at the end where people come up to a microphone and ask questions. That's pretty much the only time you'll have turn-taking in a formal situation. Sometimes the speaker will make deliberate attempts to make the presentation a bit less formal. But aside from that, typically use of big fancy words are used, and signing should be two-handed as opposed to one-handed. Speaking and signing in a formal environment, in a formal register, requires clear enunciation, slower than normal speed of signs and speech, and deliberate dictation. Now, consultative register is when two people have different statuses. If you think about the word consultative, when you consult with someone, you consult with them because they know more than you. So you consult with your doctor, you consult with your counselor, your teacher, whatever. That is consultative, and those are the settings that would be used in that register. You typically will hear complete compound sentences and sometimes a bit of technical jargon, doctor speak or lawyer speak might be in there as well. Slang would not be acceptable in a consultative register. There is definitely turn-taking that happens in a consultative register between doctor-patient, between teacher-student, but there are typically some unwritten rules associated with it. You wouldn't interrupt your doctor, that's considered rude. Or you would typically raise your hand in a classroom situation if you needed to ask a question. So those types of social norms and rules would apply. There should be a conversational speed and signing space. Enunciation is expected to be clear and articulate, but not as precise and formal as the more formal registers. The distance between the individuals is something to keep in consideration as well. Like, you would shake your lawyer's hand, but you probably wouldn't give them a hug. The status also depends on the setting. Like, if a plumber needs to seek legal advice, he goes to his lawyer, and the lawyer has the higher status in that situation. But then, if the lawyer's toilet's clogged all of a sudden, now the plumber is the one with more expertise and thus more status in that situation. The informal register is used among members of an organization, a church, neighbors, colleagues. Really, any situation where the participants have equal status. The vocabulary and sentence structure is going to be informal, so there's going to be some sentence fragments, some run-on sentences, just informal, casual conversation, not perfect grammatical English. Turn taking is much more fluid, and there's a certain amount of interruption that's accepted in this situation. Sometimes participants will finish each other's sentences or presume what the other person's going to say. Depending on the culture, you may have a lot of touching in this situation as well. Physical touching, like slapping on the back or a handshake or hugs. Signs in speech tend to be a lot more rapid and a lot less precise in enunciation. Speech tends to be a bit quieter and signs tend to be a bit smaller. The intimate register is used with people who have a long shared history. The setting for intimate register is less important than the actual people involved. It depends on the status. So if you were at a formal wedding, but interpreting between a mother and daughter that shared, a knowing look between each other, that's still an intimate register, even though it happens to be occurring in a formal environment. Often, exchanges during an intimate register, if they're wrought with grammatical errors, sometimes they're not making complete sentences at all. Sometimes an entire communication occurs with just a look. It's the kind of communication that if an outsider was listening to it, they would have absolutely no idea what was going on. But the two people that were having the conversation understood each other perfectly. There's rapid turn taking and often a lot of interruptions between the individuals.